first one, does FPV equipment qualify for beyond visual line of sight training, or does a student have to use AlteX equipment? So FPV equipment also qualifies for beyond visual line of sight training. Also, I know today we were talking a lot more on the enterprise surveying, construction, engineering perspective, but we also have a heavy focus on camera drone operations as well. So for example, on our RC Pro 2 controller, we actually figured out how to install Zoom, how to share the screen from the just the regular camera drone controller. That way you can also have simulated beyond visual line of sight on different types of systems. And just specific to the FPV, we recently built a small FPV course on our site. This is expanding in the next 2 weeks, so it's definitely going to go for a complete course around our FPV section. So you can see this is also where the beyond visual line of sight simulation happens on site, where we use visual observers. We have other people available, where you actually get a sense of flying full beyond visual line of sight, as well as having a full experience crashing the drone into different objects, checking surroundings. Those are all the different types of method we use to build up skill sets in beyond visual line of sight. Next question, when is, actually it's a couple of questions together, when is registration opening up? Registration opens up from June 1. So before I put specifically the rate and the training was before November 1 implementation time. We do have a large existing student base that we're trying to get them signed up and validated through the beyond visual line of sight process first before we can accommodate other public registrations. So please wait for next Monday is when we're releasing the recorded webinar along with the registration link. So that's not going to be public until July. This will be invite only until we get our current students and client base through the BVLOS process. As the flight season is upon us now, I just want to remind everyone our community days. So if you like to meet with not just me, but other people from my team too, who may have other areas of expertise to answer your questions, this is the great opportunity to sign up, come on site, and have a chance to network with other instructors and pilots. Would we be adding a new training course? So the public registration for the level 1 complex training course will only be added after July is when we've gotten through our current students and client database through first. And there's a question on would the level 1 theory training, which is the ground school 20 hours, would that be separate 20 hours of online materials? No, so 20 hours of ground school can be for the advanced operations. It doesn't have to be a separate level 1 complex. But we did add some additional practice quizzes, knowledge area, as well as a 6 hours of the online BVLOS simulation before the in-person flight training. So the simple answer is no, you don't have to redo 20 hours if you've already done ground school with your advanced program. There are some specific questions about what are the AlteX graduates qualify for the discounted rate. Please send our training support an email because we have to look up our student record. Mostly it applies to anyone who's completed the advanced program. That includes the online ground school. Mostly it's about the online ground school. So you need to complete a compliant 20 hours of ground school before you get qualified for the complex level 1. Next question, is it realistic for a hobbyist photographer with advanced certificate to get level 1 complex since it also requires an organization RPAS certificate to do BVLOS? That's a good question. So that's related to our first webinar where we talked about the difference between your level 1 complex pilot certificate versus the organizational certificate for your RPAS operator certificate. That is an organizational certificate. So again, from a pilot perspective, really the question comes down to, number one, do you plan to fly beyond visual line of sight? If you do, even as an individual, you can get your level 1 complex and you can submit your RPOC, RPAS operator certificate application as an individual. It doesn't have to be 100 pages of government policies, company procedures, management, etc. If this is just your personal operations, then that application can be fairly simple where you can define your operational parameters. Where do you want to operate? How do you want to operate? So it's definitely possible for an individual to even get your RPOC and start operating beyond visual line of sight. But the other side of the question is, yes, you're currently operating as a recreational purpose, more for hobby, but are you open to taking up commercial work or taking up contract or taking up different work opportunities offered? Because if as a pilot you have your level 1 complex certificate, then any organizations that have their RPOC can also hire you as a pilot to operate beyond visual line of sight under the organizational RPOC. Next question, drone vector membership included with level 1 complex training. So those of you who are interested in drone vector, we just did our invite only release last week. So after we get through the wait list of members is when we're gonna open up to the public. So again, if you're interested, you can just go to dronevector.ca where there's a join now application form. You can get your name on the wait list and we'll get through our drone vector team will contact you for the site tour and the application process. Just a quick note on drone vector, because this is more of a professional environment, so there is an application process just to make sure the members and their intended operations align with the value and the operation parameters offered at drone vector. Yeah, so that includes access to the flight courses, etc. It is a separate legal entity from AlteX entirely. There are some collaborations in between, but just like a golf course, access to drone vector, there are per session access after the membership fee. So I would recommend follow through the online application link and talk to the drone vector team directly. What is the difference between beyond visual line of sight and extended visual line of sight? Similar to a previous question, this one we answered in depth during the first webinar, which is currently available on YouTube. So please take a look. Extended visual line of sight is the major difference is extended visual line of sight. You can still operate under your advanced pilot certificate. That's the additional privilege that's added. As long as you can meet the extended visual line of sight conditions, for example, the maximum operating distance, visual observer, etc., then you can still operate under advanced pilot certificate for EVLOS. But when you operate under beyond visual line of sight, that's when you're required to have the complex level 1 and the organizational RPOC. See, there's one clarification that the AlteX level 1 complex includes the post-training flight experience. Correct. So when you sign up for the AlteX level 1 complex program, that 10 hours of post-training support with access to facility and enterprise drone equipment, those are all included as part of the program fee. Okay, there's a question on the in-person training availability. Okay, so if those of you who are familiar with the current advanced license program, is typically we have a weekly in-person training availability. So there are 2 designated days per week for beyond visual line of sight. So there's a weekday option, and then there's a weekend option, which is on Saturdays. So the 2 days are broken down into pretty much over 2 weeks period. So the weekday one, currently we're looking at Wednesday is our weekday option. So you can take the Wednesday option, which will be first Wednesday and then another Wednesday in the second week. That's when you can complete the 2 days training along with the flight review at the end of day 2. And in between, you also have access to flight facilities and systems where we encourage you to do some practice in between the 2 training days as well. And then the other option is the Saturday to Saturdays option. Anyone who is coming from out of town, or a lot of this is also for a team of private groups and sessions, then those are as usual on our on-demand schedule, where you can coordinate with our training team to pick up the designated dates. There's another added question for sheltered operations. Is it similar to the FAA rule that you can fly above 400 feet close to a building. A little different. What you're referring to is actually available under the current advanced drone operations, where if you fly close to a structure, I believe within 200 feet of the structure, don't quote me, I have to look it up. So if you're within that specific range from a structure, you can fly up to 100 feet over that structure. So an example, so when you're referring to fly above 400 feet, an example of that would be if you're inspecting a tower and the tower is 500 feet. So if you want to go over the tower, right, if you're within 200 feet radius of the tower and you go 100 feet over, so the math would be 500 feet of tower height plus your 100 feet of maximum, over the structure altitude. That puts your maximum altitude to 600 feet above ground level. That is currently allowed under the advanced operations already. The sheltered operation is if you fly around that structure, then chances are you're going to temporarily lose your visual line of sight as you are rotating around the structure. So sheltered operations is to allow you to operate that temporary beyond visual line of sight under your advanced license, rather than having to go through the whole process of getting your beyond visual line of sight. Those are all the questions we're covered today. Again, if you have any additional questions, feel free to get in touch with us or simply join us on those open field days where you get a chance to meet the team and interact with them and network, see what other questions or opportunities pop up. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Currently, the schedule for remainder of the webinar series are scheduled on the last Thursday of every month. So when we release the recorded webinar, we're actually going to be just blasting out a calendar reminder on the remainder of the webinar series that will make it easier for everyone to plan ahead.